Hi, I'm going to talk about an issue that comes up sometimes when you're dealing with data. You may have two or more lists with similar items, similar membership, and you want to compare, see basically what's missing from list B maybe, or list A. You can use this method, for example, if you have a number of email lists that are similar, especially if one is supposed to be a master list, and you can check and see if anything's missing from there. Make sure everything's reconciled. You have the same email address for everybody if that's what you want. Or you can use it for almost anything else. I'm curious to find out what you use it for. Maybe you can leave some notes in the comments. I said two or more lists. In fact, we've got 5 lists here. I'm going to unhide the other 3. And you can see it gets a little more complicated with 5 lists, but the steps to reorganize the data are the same. Okay, we're going to start by copying one list and go into our calculation sheet and paste it. And then for each of these entries, we're going to make a note of the list ID that it came from. So we're going to take this list ID, this Eurozone, and we're going to paste it in here. And if I double click this anchor here, it will propagate the value down to the bottom until it doesn't see any more data. I'm going to step outside the meeting and copy the next 4 lists as well. Okay, I'm back. Now you can see first list is the Eurozone, followed by the EU. And we've got the G for G20. We have N for NATO and W for Warsaw Pact. So now let's step through our steps. Here's the first one. I'll just mark it yellow. That means we're going to do this next. It says, what do? We sort by item followed by list. Well, actually, it's already sorted by list, so we just have to sort by item. So we can just click here, and that's done. Let's go to our next step. It's a list membership calculation. So now that we've grouped each country together, we want to make a calculation of what lists it belongs to. Got some formulas for that. So here's our first formula. And what are we doing? We're using or appending the list ID that we see on the row. So I'm going to copy this formula. Notice it doesn't have the required equal sign in the front. That's so you can simply read the formula here. We'll go to the calculations. We'll type in an equal sign, we'll paste, and then propagate. The next step is to simply copy the values here, because these formulas depend on the order of the rows. So if we want to be able to change the order by sorting or any other way, we need to save the values. So I'm going to copy this column and paste the values in here. But first, I'm going to save these headers over here, then copy this list and paste the values. Now I can restore the column headers. And that step is done. You can see up here, this column has the values, and this column has the formula. What's our next step? Our next step is to calculate what's the final row. So if we go back to Belgium here, you can see the first time it occurs, again, there's 1 entry, 2 entries, 3 entries, and we want to make a note that this is the final list, final string of lists that the country belongs to. So guess what? We have a formula for that. And it works by comparing each row to the following row. So we're going to copy this text, go back to calculations, go to the first row, type an equal sign, paste, and propagate. So if we go back to Belgium or Bulgaria, first item, it says, no, this is not final. Second item, not final. Third item is final. We're going to go to our next step, which is to get our final row flags. Basically, we're going to simply copy these values into this column again. So I will copy the headers, paste them here, copy this row, paste the values here, and then restore the headers. Let's take a look at our next step. We're getting close to being done. This is a sort. We sort by final. That's this column here, followed by item. Again, we're already sorted by item, so we need to sort by this column here. Click sort, sort A to Z. And now we've got the results we want down to this row. The rest of the rows we don't need. But we're not going to stop here. We're going to reorganize this a little more so we can handle the data more flexibly. Next step, it says copy 5 columns. There's a note on here. Notice there are 3 hidden columns. We're going to copy these first 5 columns to our result sheet here. And you can see it goes from A to E, the column names. It's because B, C, and D are hidden. The reason for that is these columns B, C, and D, we don't need this data really. So we're going to copy these 5 columns here. We don't need the final indicator. We just need to stop at the final. Go to Result tab and paste. And let's look at what our next step is. We're going to get list counts. This is not really necessary, but I find it pretty useful. It's more interesting than useful. So we're going to copy this formula here. What does it do? It counts the commas and it adds 1. Let's go to our results. So for example, Albania, there's one comma because there are 2 lists it belongs to. Equal sign, there we go. And we can propagate this too. And I meant to keep this header in, but I forgot. Let's just type it, list counts. And now we're going to go back to our calculation sheet to find the next. Step 8 we've done. Step 9 comes next. We're going to copy the headers, and the note says it's from the data sheet to the result sheet. So here's the data sheet. I'm going to copy these headers. So it's got the ID and the textual name of the list. I'm going to copy it here and go back and find the last step. And that's to get sortable IDs. We have a formula for that. How does it work? It uses the column header value when applicable. So we'll copy this formula. Go to the Result tab. We'll paste it in there. We're going to propagate horizontally. We'll just drag it this time. And you can see it's working. This first country, Albania, belongs to NATO and Warsaw Pact, or it used to. And they're indicated here. They're not indicated where it doesn't belong. So we can highlight these 5 and propagate with a double click. And this is really close to done. It's all done except for a little bit of formatting I'm going to add to make it look like this sample sheet here. So there's a formula, one more formula here for this formula is for formatting. So we'll go to results. We'll highlight our data. We're going to make some bands with alternating colors so that it's just a little bit easier to read. I'm going to add a rule. We're going to use a formula. We're going to type an equal sign and paste. And we're going to pick a color. We're going to pick a color here. And we'll add a second complementary color, another new rule. I'm going to change this from 1 to 0 to get the even rows. Click Format and pick a complementary color. And you can see the alternating rows, and these will stay the same when we do a sort. Let's just pick a similar color for a fill on the headers. And now we're done. Okay, now let's take a look at some of the ways you can use this data. So first of all, you can sort by the item or the country in our case. That way you can simply find it listed alphabetically. Look in this column to find out what lists it's a member of, or same information is over here. You might find that easier. We already saw we can sort by this column. So you can find out what countries are in 4 lists versus 3 versus 2 versus 1. And then let's say you want to know, for example, what countries are in G20 and NATO. So we can sort by these 2 in a row. And then we'll go down to the bottom, and the countries that are in both are here. They won't be anywhere else. That's about it. I hope you have fun with this.